Max Verstappen. He didn't just arrive in Formula One, he was engineered for it. His father, Jos Verstappen, wasn't just another retired racer. He'd been part of Michael Schumacher's Benetton team in the 90s. He knew exactly what it took to survive at the sport's edge. And what could break a driver? When Max was a child, Jos made that knowledge the blueprint of his son's life. The Verstappen household wasn't about bedtime stories. It was about data, telemetry, and punishment. If Max mistimed a breaking point in karting, Jos would make him study video until he understood why. When Max made a mistake at a European karting event in 2012, Jos famously drove home without him, forcing the teenager to find his own ride back. It sounds cruel, but it forged something rare. A driver who doesn't feel fear, doesn't second guess, and never forgets. By 16 years old, Max had already destroyed every junior category he entered. Red Bull, always hunting prodigies, saw a future headline, not a risk. At 17, he became the youngest driver ever to start a Formula One race. The decision drew outrage. The FIA even changed its superlicense rules because of him. Critics called it nepotism mixed with arrogance. Jos had used his influence to rush his son past the ladder. But on track, Max made the argument irrelevant. His first season at Toro Rosso was chaos. Spectacular overtakes, crashes that bent suspension arms and logic alike. But every lap was pure talent. He drove with the precision of someone who'd been in a car for 2 decades. By the next year, Red Bull promoted him mid-season. His debut race for the senior team was Spain 2016. Hamilton and Rosberg collided on lap 1, and a teenage Verstappen suddenly found himself leading the race with Kimi Räikkönen's Ferrari closing in. 44 laps later, the kid crossed the line first. 18 years old, a race winner. What followed was evolution. The raw aggression remained, but Jos's discipline had carved something harder underneath. By 2021, Max was a weapon sharpened by years of psychological warfare, not against rivals, but against expectation itself. The world watched as he and Lewis Hamilton turned that season into a movie. Silverstone's clash, Monza's crash, and finally, Abu Dhabi lap 58. Hamilton was minutes from an 8th title when a late safety car changed history. 1 lap, 1 move, 1 championship. Since then, Max has redefined domination. 3 consecutive world titles, over 50 wins before his 27th birthday, and statistical margins unseen since Schumacher. He breaks records, shrugs, and keeps going. The Nepo kid debate, dead. He's the benchmark of modern Formula One, the perfect product of privilege transformed into performance. Jos built the foundation, but Max built the empire. Nico Rosberg. If Verstappen's success feels explosive, Nico Rosberg's feels surgical. Born in Wiesbaden, but raised in Monaco's tax-friendly comfort, Nico grew up surrounded by F1 royalty. His father, Keke Rosberg, the 1982 world champion, kept his trophies in sight, but his expectations higher. Nico's childhood kart was the best money could buy. His schoolmates were future rivals, and his weekends were spent walking pit lanes instead of playgrounds. From the start, Nico understood 2 truths. Connections open doors, and talent keeps them open. He studied engineering while racing karts. He could calculate fuel loads before most kids could parallel park. That intellect made him a data-driven driver, obsessed with numbers and marginal gains. He joined Williams in 2006, scoring points on debut, but the world still saw him as Keek's kid. The move to Mercedes in 2010 was supposed to change that, and 3 years later, Lewis Hamilton arrived. One of the fastest drivers ever, an old karting rival, and a media hurricane. Nico could have become the quiet teammate, but something in him hardened. 2014, Mercedes introduced the hybrid W05, and dominance began. Rosberg and Hamilton won every race except 3, turning Formula One into a civil war fought inside the same garage. To outsiders, Hamilton looked destined to own the era. But Nico was learning how Lewis braked, how he saved energy, how he fought under pressure. He studied telemetry like a scientist preparing for revenge. 2 years later, 2016, the payback arrived. Rosberg won the first 4 races straight. His starts were lightning, his discipline cold. Hamilton fought back, of course. Wheel-to-wheel clashes in Spain, Austria, Germany. But Nico never cracked. He didn't try to humiliate Lewis. He just outplanned him. Every overtake he avoided was strategy. Every controlled finish was patience. endurance. By the final round in Abu Dhabi, he didn't need to win. He needed to survive. He did. World champion. And then he did something almost unheard of. He quit. 5 days after lifting the trophy, Nico Rosberg retired. No farewell tour. No nostalgia. Just an exit on his terms. People called it cowardice. It wasn't. It was closure. The son of a champion had become one himself, beating one of the greatest ever in equal machinery. His father watched from the garage as history completed its circle. 34 years after Cake's title, another Rosberg name on the cup. For a so-called Nepo kid, that's the cleanest victory imaginable. Born in legacy, ended in legacy, and sealed forever in the statistics that don't care whose son you are. Damon Hill. For him, Formula One wasn't a dream handed down. It was a burden resurrected. His father, Graham Hill, had been everything. Two-time world champion, Indy 500 winner, Le Mans victor, the only man to complete the triple crown of motorsport. Graham wasn't just a racer. He was Britain's national hero on wheels. But in 1975, when Damon was just 15, a private plane carrying his father, several team members, and trophies from yet another victory crashed on approach to Elstree. No survivors. Overnight, the Hill family went from motorsport royalty to financial ruin. Damon's mother sold off belongings to survive. There were no private academies, no elite sponsors waiting. Damon finished school, took up part-time jobs, and rode motorbikes in club races. Not because he wanted the thrill, but because it was all he could afford. His climb back into professional racing was slow, brutal, and unfunded. By the time he entered Formula Ford, most of his contemporaries already had Formula 3 contracts. Damon was 23, an age when most prospects were either in F1 or forgotten. Yet, he kept clawing. His surname got him noticed, but his results kept him employed. In 1992, Hill finally reached Formula One as a test driver for Williams, the same team that had once battled his father's Lotus cars. A year later, he was a full-time racer. He wasn't flashy, no raw Senna speed, no Schumacher explosiveness, but he was methodical, calm, and devastatingly consistent. Then, tragedy returned. At the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, Ayrton Senna, Hill's new teammate and friend, was killed. The Williams garage went silent. The entire team nearly withdrew from the sport. Hill could have collapsed under that weight. Instead, he carried it. He led Williams through the rest of the season, nearly stealing the title from Schumacher. By 1996, fate finally paid its debt. With Williams at its technical peak and Renault's V10 purring perfection, Hill became unstoppable. 8 wins, unmatched reliability. Every weekend, he looked more like a man completing his father's unfinished chapter. At Suzuka, when he crossed the finish line to clinch the championship, the radio cracked. "I've done it!" A rare burst of emotion from a man who'd carried grief for 21 years. Damon Hill's title wasn't just another trophy. It was closure for a family that had lost everything. From tragedy to triumph, from an empty garage to a world crown. No Nepo narrative could ever script something that poetic. He didn't ride his father's coattails. He rebuilt the Hill legacy from wreckage. Jacques Villeneuve, few surnames carry as much mythology as Villeneuve. Gilles Villeneuve was more than a Ferrari driver. He was a symbol of purity in racing. The fearless Canadian who would fight for every inch until the car broke beneath him. When he died at Zolder in 1982, Formula One lost one of its most beloved souls. His son, Jacques, was just 11 years old. For more than a decade, the Villeneuve name lay dormant, worshipped in nostalgia, but untouchable on track. Then, in the 1990s, Jacques decided to bring it back. Not through Ferrari, not through emotion, but through precision. Jacques carved his path through the North American ladder, winning the 1995 Indy 500 and the kart championship in the same season. Something no European F1 heir had ever done. By 1996, Williams snatched him up. The car was a rocket, but the name was heavier than the machinery. Every journalist wanted to see if the son could match the Saint. His rookie season was almost supernatural. He led on debut in Melbourne, took 4 wins, and fought Damon Hill, another racer born into legacy, for the title all the way to the final round. Second place. In your first year of Formula One, behind a champion twice your age, it was already success. But 1997 was his masterpiece. The FW19 was fast, but so was Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. The year became a psychological duel. Schumacher's ruthless aggression versus Villeneuve's cool defiance. It all came down to Jerez, the last race of the season. Schumacher led the championship by 1 point. On lap 48, Villeneuve lunged down the inside at the hairpin. Schumacher turned in hard. hard. The Ferrari rammed the Williams, lifted, and slid into the gravel. Villeneuve continued. Wounded car, bent suspension, but enough to finish third, and enough to take the title. That single moment froze history. The son of Gilles Villeneuve winning the world championship, beating Ferrari and Schumacher, and doing it with courage that mirrored his father's spirit. Villeneuve's later career faded. Yes, team politics, bar failures, bad luck. But that doesn't erase 1997. It remains one of the greatest individual seasons in modern Formula One. For the Villeneuve legacy, it wasn't about longevity. It was about redemption. The father gave F1 its heart. The son gave it closure. Ralf Schumacher. When your last name is Schumacher, the world expects you to be great. But when your older brother is Michael Schumacher, the man who rewrote the meaning of dominance in Formula One, the world expects you to be impossible. Ralf Schumacher was born into the same racing cradle as Michael, the dusty kart tracks of Kirpen, Germany. Their father, Rolf, ran the local karting circuit and worked as a bricklayer to fund his son's early races. But where Michael was disciplined and obsessive, Ralf was the rebel, more fiery, emotional, and unwilling to live in anyone's shadow. By the time Michael became a world champion with Benetton in 1994, Ralf was still climbing through Formula 3, trying to carve his own lane. The comparisons were constant and cruel. Journalists called him the other Schumacher. Sponsors backed him not for his skill, but for his surname. And that's what made him dangerous. Because Ralph's motivation wasn't to share the Schumacher legacy, it was to beat it. He broke into F1 in 1997 with Jordan, a team known for discovering raw, aggressive talent. In his debut season, he finished on the podium in Argentina after a fearless drive that turned heads. But his true rise came with Williams, where he joined in 1999 alongside Jenson Button and later Juan Pablo Montoya. Williams had rediscovered their firepower, and Ralf became its sharp edge. His driving was clean but ruthless. His racecraft underrated. Between 2001 and 2003, he won 6 Grand Prix, including dominant back-to-back victories at Imola and Montreal, where he outpaced Michael in identical conditions. Those moments silenced the skeptics. The younger Schumacher wasn't just filling space on the grid. He was winning in a front-running car, legitimately beating the greatest driver of the era, his own brother. But Ralph's personality was complex. He wasn't political or media-friendly. He spoke bluntly, clashed with team bosses, and refused to play the PR game. That independence earned him respect inside the paddock, but cost him leverage when things went wrong. His move to Toyota in 2005 looked promising, but the car never delivered. By 2007, the chapter was closed. Still, 6 wins, 27 podiums, and years spent as one of the few drivers capable of challenging Michael Schumacher. That's no small feat. He didn't redefine F1, but he redefined what it meant to be a second Schumacher. In a world obsessed with comparisons, Ralf carved his own headline. He didn't live in Michael's shadow. He proved that even a shadow can shine. Carlos Sainz Jr. He grew up in a home where perfection wasn't celebrated. It was expected. His father, Carlos Sainz Sr., wasn't just a rally driver. He was a 2-time world rally champion, known across motorsport for his tactical intelligence and unbreakable discipline. He was El Matador, a man who calculated risks with surgical precision. From a young age, Carlos Jr. was surrounded by the smell of oil and the sound of engines echoing through his family's Madrid estate. But his path wasn't destined for tarmac. Rallying was the family trade. When he chose single-seaters instead, his father didn't stop him. He studied him, and then, like a general preparing his soldier, he molded him the same way he'd prepared himself. Measured, detail-obsessed, never impulsive. Carlos's rise was more old-school than flashy. He joined the Red Bull Junior program, a notoriously brutal system that creates champions or casualties. For every Verstappen it finds, 10 others disappear. But Sainz survived it. He shared the Toro Rosso garage with Max Verstappen in 2015. And while Max stole headlines, insiders noticed how relentlessly consistent Carlos was. No drama, no excuses, just clean results. When Renault called, Sainz took the risk. Then McLaren came knocking, and his career ignited. At McLaren, he became the quiet star, outscoring Lando Norris 2 years in a row and restoring the team's confidence after years of chaos. His 2019 podium in Brazil, snatched from nowhere, marked him as one of the most dependable, intelligent drivers on the grid. Then came Ferrari, the ultimate stage, the ultimate pressure cooker. Sainz joined the Scuderia in 2021, 2021, where he faced Charles Leclerc, Ferrari's golden boy. Most expected Sainz to play backup. He didn't. He beat Leclerc on points in his first year. By 2022, he took his first Grand Prix victory at Silverstone, surviving a chaotic race and late restarts with the coolness of a veteran. That day, as he stood on the top step draped in Ferrari red, you could almost hear echoes of his father's mindset. Calm, composed, surgical, no wild celebration. Just a quiet nod, a deep breath, and another step forward. Carlos Sainz Jr. isn't a champion yet, but he's a success story built on evolution. He didn't inherit a title, he inherited a mindset. Focus over flair, precision over popularity. He's one of the few modern drivers who represent the perfect blend of legacy and merit. The son of a rally legend who became one of Formula One's most respected tacticians. In a sport filled with hype and shortcuts, Carlos is proof that a Nepo kid can succeed, not because of privilege, but because of how he uses it. His father gave him access to excellence. Carlos made it his standard.